We had a shoe shine stand that was built right against the back wall of this pool room that was next door. So we shined shoes there. And then one day, I guess my dad was out and he saw a place around Milwaukee and Woodward. And he talked to the gentleman there. It was right behind the bank. And we decided that we'd put a shoe shine stand over there. And we had a shoe shine stand there. And from there, we were looking at behind Cunningham's, which was over on East Grand Boulevard and Woodward. There was a Cunningham's there. And in front of Cunningham's at that time were laboratories that were underground, men's and women's laboratory. So it turned out to be quite an adventure for me. And that was about the time I was getting ready to start going to high school. And we had a shoe shine stand there. And as a matter of fact, most of the guys on West Side know my first employee. He was one of my dearest friends who died not too long ago. Tommy Tyler was one of my first employees. And we had quite a business there. We made quite a bit of money. I put my first $1,000 or so in the bank across the street from there, shining shoes. You can imagine that something like 15 cents a piece in shining shoes. That's a lot of shoe shining. But Tommy and I guess in the summer, we shined shoes there, and had quite a bit of business because down the street from us was the Latin Quarter. So in the evening, I learned to drive on the parking lot. So we got to parking cars. And I used to park cars on the weekend for the Latin Quarter. And there was a parking lot behind Cunningham's. So on the weekends, that's what I did besides shining shoes. Then we set up a business that we were doing very well. Then we set up a business whereas we would, with the other parking lot guys, the people would leave their shoes in the car, and we go get them and shine them and put them back in the car. And we give a guy a percentage for handling it for us, a parking lot attendant. So that kept us business during the week. We had the architectural club. I was in the architectural department, and we had the architectural club. And there were some things that happened in the architecture. I can very vividly remember one time that I was president of the architecture club, and we went out to Cranbrook, going out to Cranbrook. And we stopped at a restaurant to get some food. And I was the only black in the group, but I was the president of the club, and they would serve everybody but me. And that that was sort of a shocking thing to have occurred because then I had buddies that they all ordered food and then walked out and left it. I ordered told them, give me 6 hamburgers to go, cheeseburgers to go. Then when I walked out, I left his cheeseburgers there, knowing they weren't any good for anything behind that. But these are some of the things that you experience in the early days, and you look back and say, okay, well, that's the way it is. And in the early days, we used to shop at A&P. And one of my first ventures in business was carrying groceries home from A&P. Then I got into the manufacturing business of making push carts for other people to carry the groceries home. And then I had a little jigsaw, and I used to make whatnot shelves and different things and sell them in the neighborhood. Prior to that, we were selling candy for my dad, who made candy, and we used to go out with baskets and sell candy to the neighbors. I lived right directly across from the old McGraw, which had the wood floors and the auditorium. And I think the toughest person in the school was a girl named Daisy. Daisy could whip everybody in the school. And at that time in our neighborhood, you did one or two things well. You either ran well or you fought well. But you had to learn how to do one of the two. And so when I left McGraw, I went to McMichael. And it was always kind of amusing because the majority of the classes I was in, there was very few blacks, and there was two Glens. And it was always a duel between the two Glens. I was the black Glen, and he was the white Glen. So, when the instructor would read off the grades and things, it was always Glen, and they waited for the last name, the other drop of the foot to see, the competition. That was all the way through school, though. And I went to McMichael, and then from McMichael, I went to Cass Tech, and I went in the architectural department. And I think the time when we went in the architectural department, there was initially about 50 kids coming in the architectural department. and it was about 4 blacks at the time in the class, and it was quite an experience going to Cass. Um, we had everything going. I mean, we learned, we had the drafting, and we had all the different courses and things, electrical, mechanical. We learned how to wire a house and conduit, and we learned a lot about hands-on learning. But at the same time, you had a good academic program going, because when I came out of Cass, I was doing calculus and other things. And Cass was a good experience because, and particularly for networking, I found that a lot of the people I met later in life were people that had gone to Cass. I guess, of course, now the mayor knows me, but I'm too old. I'm a Cassite, but I guess I'm too old. We went to the Granada Theater, and that was at Junction and Warren. And it was a unique theater, and as much you go to that particular theater. I'm relating to it was kind of ties back to the block. But that time when we used to go to show, you would have the two main features. Then you'd have the news. Then you'd have the cartoons. Then you'd have the chapter picture. Plus, they would probably give you a dish. Everybody's house had all these different dishes. And none of them matched because nobody went back enough times to get a whole set. Joe Louis comes to mind, YMCA, downtown Detroit, me hanging on his muscle and not washing my hands for a week. Joe Louis brings to mind uh, is when I was a kid and I was in Grand Rapids. I'll tell you how it was. And he fought Max Smelling. And matter of fact, we were out there in Bloomers. My brother and I boxing. We were boxers. Joe Louis was an idol, and that was a period of time when they had wagons with horses, junk men, and so forth. But Joe Louis was symbolic of, had a real impact on us. He's the Muhammad Ali of his day, more so than Muhammad Ali, because blacks just, that was their only shining star out there. We got a lot of shining stars out there now.